Okay, we'll continue here with the last couple of sections in Reading 17. Section 7 has to do with the function of religion. There are three: the cognitive, existential, and social. Please read through this commentary very carefully. I'm not stopping on everything that's important. I'm just hitting the highlights. First, the cognitive function. The first sentence gets us started here. Religion attempts to answer questions that lie beyond the purview of science, empiricism, logic, and reason. So this is religion simply as a means of knowing about the natural world. Now, of course, you're probably thinking, well, wait, isn't that what science does? Well, yes, today. But before the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment, by the way, occurred in like the 16th, 17th centuries, and also referred to as the Age of Reason and the Age of Science. Well, after that point in time, people began to look to science. But please note, before the Enlightenment, people looked to religion for information and knowledge about the real world we live in. So clearly, the cognitive function was very important at one point in time, but is no longer as important, since today people generally look to science for answers regarding the real world we live in. There's quite a bit of discussion there about the God of the gaps idea. Please read through that. You can see where it says it's the idea that basic human ignorance regarding the nature and form of the universe will always guarantee the relevance of religion and the idea of God, since it is assumed that science will never be able to explain everything. So when there are gaps in our knowledge, people invoke God or the hand of God to explain it. Well, an obvious critique of that approach is this: if we can't explain something, then put a period on it. We can explain it. You can't then step in and say, oh, but I can explain it, and then invoke God or the hand of God or some supernatural force to explain it. So that's an obvious critique of that notion. Please read through that carefully. Secondly, we have the existential function, and this is where we get into issues that are of a great emotional concern, issues which involve us personally, particularly those issues that can be potentially anxiety-provoking, fear of death, uncertainty about what's going to happen to us or our loved ones after we die. Look at the second paragraph. There are a variety of responses to this predicament we find ourselves in, but they can be divided into two different camps. There are those who find the answers within themselves and the world we inhabit. And then on the other hand, there are those who look beyond this world. That will be believers, for answers. The former, in other words, the ones that look within themselves and in the world, they are true existentialists. In other words, true individuals who live their life to the fullest on their own terms, since they reject cultural answers to these questions. And also in this group would be included materialists who find their own meaning and purpose in this world. So there's definitely a divide there regarding how people deal with the ultimate issues of uncertainty and so forth. Skip down a couple of paragraphs and I have a few more comments about this. The two camps, you have the existentialist materialists on the one side, believers on the other side, differ fundamentally in regard to the meaning and purpose of existence. The former, in other words, existentialists and materialists, do not simply accept the fact that there must be an inherent meaning and purpose in the world we live in. And then the latter, in other words, religious believers, insist on the fact that there must be a reason why we are here, and that reason must be inherent in the world we live in. Finally, the social function. This is a sense of shared community that people get from their faith. So people who really enjoy the fellowship that their faith brings them would fit within this function. So this is a very important function for a lot of people, particularly the elderly who may not have a whole lot of contact with their family anymore. Section 8, the three major categories of religion. The first category of religion is the great religions. You see I have them listed there. By the way, I most recently have been going with 11, as have most other scholars. Most scholars don't include Baha'i, so we'll just drop that one. But you can read all the other religions there. And please note the reasons why we call these great religions. There's 1, 2, and 3 there. They're either very large, or they are historically significant, or they're culturally significant. So consider Judaism, for example. Judaism is actually very tiny in regard to number of believers. So number 1 wouldn't hold, but certainly number 2 and number 3 would. Judaism is actually the foundation of both Christianity and Islam. The oldest religion of the great religions is Hinduism. As I say, its roots go back possibly 5,000 years ago. That's what 3000 BCE is, which makes it the oldest religion, the oldest great religion. In case you're wondering, Judaism dates back about 4,000 years ago. All right, the second category of religions, you see that word extant, that means existing today. The second category, tribal indigenous religions. And these have actually been fallen within the purview of cultural anthropology. There's a little table there. You can see I have the characteristics listed. First of all, they are non-literate, which simply means that they're not written religions. They are generally oral religions, passed down orally. It doesn't mean that the people who practice them are not literate. Secondly, they're closely linked to a particular place and particular cultural group. In fact, they're very intimately tied to one specific place, one particular group. They also generally don't make any distinction between this world and the supernatural world. And they're very old. In fact, of the three categories, these religions are by far the oldest. Some can be dated back 10, 15, 20,000 years, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Then finally, the last category of religions, I use the term modern/alternative because they really don't fit in the other categories. And you can see, I give you some examples of what I mean there. Scientology, Rastafarianism, Mormonism. These would be examples of modern alternative religions. So that's our third and final category. Now in my classes generally I don't address the digging deeper on magic, ritual, and baseball, or the section on shamanism for reasons of time, and so therefore I won't do that here. So we'll end our discussion of reading 17 right there.